I never imagined my fashion empire would remain my best-kept secret. But watching Manhattan's elite realize that the nobody they dismissed actually owned their favorite brands made every moment of hiding worth it. Before I tell you how I orchestrated the most dramatic revelation in Fashion Week history, let me know in the comments if you've ever been underestimated by people who thought they were better than you. Hit that like button if you believe revenge is best served in designer labels. This story is for you. My name is Alexandra Kingston, and at 31 I lived what seemed to be two entirely separate lives. To New York's fashion elite, I was the quiet girl who did something with clothes and couldn't afford front-row seats. In reality, I was the founder and owner of Kingston Global Luxury, KGL, the silent power behind 23 luxury fashion brands and the most exclusive manufacturing facilities in Italy and France. The irony? The upcoming New York Fashion Week showcase where Manhattan's elite would be fighting for front-row seats was actually my event. Every brand, every design, every carefully curated detail belonged to my company. Not that anyone knew, yet. Growing up in Brooklyn, I learned early that fashion was more than clothes. It was armor. My mother, Isabella Kingston, worked as a seamstress for high-end designers, often bringing home scraps of luxury fabrics that I would transform into my own creations. While other kids had playrooms, I had a makeshift design studio in our tiny apartment. "You have the eye," Mom would say, watching me repurpose leftover silk and lace. "But more importantly, you understand the business behind the beauty." He was right. By 12, I could spot authentic designer pieces from knockoffs. By 15, I was secretly selling my own designs to classmates, marketing them as exclusive imports. But it was my grandmother, Valentina, who taught me the most valuable lesson. "The fashion industry runs on perception, tesoro," she'd say in her elegant Italian accent. "Let them see what they expect to see. The real power works in silence." Grandmother Valentina hadn't always been a quiet Brooklyn resident. In her youth, she'd been one of Milan's most respected pattern makers, creating the foundations for designs that would become fashion legends. When she passed away during my senior year of high school, she left me her life savings and a list of contacts in Italy's most exclusive fashion houses. "Your grandmother saw something special in you," Mom told me, handing over the inheritance. "She believed you could build something extraordinary." While my classmates headed to prestigious fashion schools, I took a different path. I used Grandmother Valentina's money to start small, buying high-end fabric remnants and creating limited edition pieces that I sold through carefully cultivated online channels. By 20, I had enough capital to acquire my first struggling luxury brand, a small but prestigious Italian label that had fallen on hard times. I revitalized it using my designs while maintaining the original brand name. No one knew that the stunning comeback was orchestrated by a young girl from Brooklyn. "The fashion world runs on names," I remembered Grandmother Valentina saying. "But the real power lies in ownership." Over the next decade, I built my empire in absolute secrecy. While fashion magazines speculated about the mysterious force behind the industry's biggest acquisitions, I maintained my cover as a modest designer who hadn't quite made it. Then came the invitation that would change everything. The annual Luxe Fashion Show, announced Camilla Sinclair, Manhattan's self-proclaimed fashion queen, during one of her notorious industry brunches. "Only the most elite brands will be featured." I sat quietly in the corner, dressed in a deceptively simple black dress that probably cost more than Camilla's monthly trust fund allowance. Not that she'd recognize the subtle craftsmanship of my own premium label. "Of course," Camilla continued, glancing dismissively in my direction, "some people might find the ticket prices prohibitive. We can't all afford front row, can we, Alexandra?" Her companions, Vanessa Warren, heir to a retail fortune, and Sophia Blake, a third-generation fashion magazine editor, tittered appropriately. "I might attend," I said mildly, sipping my champagne while mentally reviewing the show's production schedule I'd approved yesterday. "Oh darling," Sophia laughed, "the standing room section is already sold out. Perhaps you could watch the live stream." What they didn't know was that I own not just the brands being showcased, but the entire venue. The exclusive front row seats they were bragging about? I had personally designed the seating arrangement. The final straw came when Camilla's mother, Margaret Sinclair, joined our table. Once a respected designer, she now survived on her family name and outdated connections. "Alexandra," she said with false concern, I heard you're still trying to sell your designs to department stores. You know, we might have an opening for an assistant pattern maker in our junior line. I thought about the document sitting in my office. Proof that I'd just acquired the Sinclair family's failing fashion house through a shell company. They just didn't know it yet. Actually, I began but was cut off by Camilla's loud announcement. Ladies, let's discuss the seating chart for my after-party. Alexandra, you can go. We need to talk about important industry matters. As I stood to leave, I overheard Vanessa's stage whisper. Can you believe she still tries to pretend she's one of us? Probably snuck into brunch using a fake name. Looking around at their smug faces, at the designer bags that were actually made in my factories, at the clothes from brands I secretly owned, I made my decision. Time to show them who really runs this industry, I murmured, pulling out my phone to set the revelation in motion. The fashion world was about to learn an expensive lesson about judging a book by its cover. Especially when that cover was wearing couture they didn't recognize. The 2 weeks leading up to New York Fashion Week became my personal chess game. Every move was calculated, every detail orchestrated for maximum impact. I worked from my real office, a stunning penthouse atop the KGL Tower, though the building's ownership was hidden behind layers of corporate veils. The seating charts are finalized, my executive assistant Dominique reported. She was one of the few people who knew my true identity. The Sinclairs and their group are in the front row, exactly where they demanded to be. Perfect, I smiled, reviewing the show's lineup on my holographic display. And the press packets? Ready to distribute the moment you give the signal. Every major fashion publication will receive the full documentation of KGL's ownership structure, including the recent acquisition of Sinclair Fashion House. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking Manhattan's fashion district. My fashion district, though none of the buzzing fashionistas below knew it. My simple black dress today was from my upcoming ultra-luxury line, hand-stitched in my private atelier in Milan. The fabric alone cost more than most designer gowns. Ms. Kingston, my chief legal counsel Isabella Torres, entered with a stack of documents. The final paperwork for the Sinclair acquisition is complete. They'll receive official notice during the show. Timing is everything, I mused, thinking of Camilla's sneering face. Have they figured out yet that their mysterious investor is actually me? No, Isabella smirked. Margaret Sinclair signed over control without even reading the fine print. Too desperate to save their failing brand to ask questions. The intercom buzzed. My head of security. Ma'am, Camilla Sinclair is in the building lobby, demanding to see the real owner of the venue. Let her wait, I instructed. Tell her management will address all concerns during the show. I turned back to the window, remembering all the times I'd been dismissed, belittled, and underestimated by people like Camilla. Each slight had just been fuel for my ambition, each dismissal another brick in my empire. Dominique, I called, show me the numbers. My assistant pulled up the company's portfolio on the screens. Kingston Global Luxury's true scope appeared in gleaming digital clarity. 23 luxury brands, 11 manufacturing facilities, 6 exclusive fashion venues, and a net worth that would make even the Sinclair fortune look like pocket change. The media is already calling it the most anticipated show of Fashion Week, Dominique noted. Though they don't know half of what's really coming. They're about to learn, I replied, picking up a small remote control. Let's do a final rehearsal. The office lights dimmed as hidden panels opened in the walls, revealing my private collection. Hundreds of designs, each one personally created and approved by me, each one bearing the labels of different KGL brands. The upcoming show would feature pieces from all of them, a carefully curated revelation of my empire's true scope. The Sinclair Group's reactions are going to be priceless, Isabella observed, reviewing their recent social media posts mocking my supposed inability to afford front-row seats. Speaking of seats, I smiled, pulling up the seating chart. Show me their view. A holographic representation of the venue appeared, zooming in on the front row where Camilla and her friends would be sitting. They had no idea that their precious front-row seats were actually positioned for maximum impact when the truth was revealed. Your grandmother would have loved this, Dominique said softly, knowing how much Valentina had influenced my journey. She taught me that true power doesn't need to announce itself, I agreed. But sometimes, it needs to teach a lesson. The next few days passed in a blur of final preparations. Every detail was checked and double-checked. The show would feature designs from all my brands, building to a climactic revelation that would shake the fashion world to its core. The morning of the show, I received a text from Camilla. Heard you begging for a standing room ticket. Don't embarrass yourself trying to attend. Know your place. I screenshot the message, adding it to my collection of similar insults and dismissals from Manhattan's fashion elite. Soon they would all learn exactly what my place was. Miss Kingston, Dominique appeared at my door. The venue is ready. Would you like to do a final walkthrough? I stood, smoothing my dress. Another of my own designs, though the label inside read like a who's who of luxury fashion. Yes. It's time to make sure everything is perfect for our guests of honor. The venue was a masterpiece of modern design, every detail carefully chosen to enhance the upcoming revelation. The lighting, the seating, even the temperature was controlled from my private command center. The Sinclair Group just confirmed their attendance, my event director reported. Camilla demanded that the air conditioning be adjusted around her seat. Oh, it will be, I smiled. They'll need it cool when things heat up. As the final preparations were made, I thought about my mother, still working as a seamstress, still keeping my secret as requested. She would be attending tonight, seated in her own place of honor, ready to watch as her daughter's empire was finally revealed. Your grandmother always said the fashion world needed a revolution, she told me last night. Show them what real power looks like, my darling. Looking around at my creation, the venue, the brands, the empire I'd built from nothing, I knew the time for hiding was over. Manhattan's fashion elite had no idea that their entire world was about to change. The revolution would be dressed in couture and I would be leading it. The night of the show arrived with the electric energy that only New York Fashion Week can generate. I watched from my private observation room as the fashion elite filtered in, air-kissing and jockeying for position even though their seats were already assigned. Camilla and her group made their entrance last, naturally. She wore a gown from one of my Italian labels, while Sophia sported a handbag from my French collection. The irony wasn't lost on me. Everything is ready, Dominique confirmed, handing me a final update. The press packets are in position, and the ownership announcements are prepared. I nodded, watching as Margaret Sinclair took her seat, completely unaware that she no longer controlled her family's fashion house. Let's begin. The lights dimmed right as Camilla was making a show of adjusting her front row seat. The massive screens lit up with the KGL logo, a design element none of them had yet connected to all their favorite brands. The first segment of the show went exactly as they expected. Stunning designs from what they thought were independent luxury labels. I watched their reactions through discreet cameras, noting their whispered comments. Obviously knockoffs, Sophia sniffed as one of my most expensive pieces glided past. The real designer would never allow their work in this show. I smiled, knowing that particular dress had been handcrafted in my private atelier. Then right on cue the lights shifted. The venue's director stepped onto the runway. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first public showcase of Kingston Global Luxury. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't on their programs. Tonight, we reveal that every design you've seen, and every brand represented, is part of the KGL empire, founded and owned by one visionary designer. The screens began displaying logos, all 23 of my brands including Sinclair Fashion House. I watched as Margaret Sinclair's face went pale, finally recognizing my company's name from the acquisition papers she'd signed. Please welcome the owner of Kingston Global Luxury, the creative force behind the industry's most prestigious brands. Camilla was already standing, her voice carrying clearly, "This is impossible. These are independent labels. My family's brand would never." Alexandra Kingston. The silence was absolute as I stepped onto the runway, wearing a gown I'd designed specifically for this moment. The fabric alone had cost more than Camilla's entire wardrobe. "Good evening," I said into the microphone, my voice carrying through the stunned venue. "I believe some of you suggested I watch the live stream?" The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in elegant revenge. I detailed each brand acquisition, each design innovation, each market manipulation that had built my empire. With each revelation, I watched the color drain from more faces in the front row. The Sinclair Classic line? I smiled directly at Margaret. Acquired last week. The paperwork should be arriving now. On cue, assistants delivered documents to the Sinclair family, outlining their brand's new ownership structure. Under my complete control. This is a mistake, Camilla stood, her voice shaking. Daddy's lawyers will. Your father's lawyers already approved the sale. I cut her off smoothly. In fact, they recommended it given your family brand's financial situation. Would you like me to display the numbers for everyone? She sank back into her seat as the screens showed exactly how close to bankruptcy her family's fashion house had been before my acquisition. Moving on to our manufacturing facilities, I continued, enjoying the growing realization in the audience. Those exclusive Italian factories you all brag about using? The French ateliers? Also mine. In fact. I paused for effect. That dress you're wearing, Camilla? I designed it. Though you paid triple its worth because of the label, which I also own. Sophia Blake was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to confirm my claims. But your clothes, your apartment, were carefully chosen to maintain my cover, I explained. This business runs on perception after all. Something my grandmother taught me. I gestured and the screens displayed my real estate holdings. The KGL Tower, the manufacturing facilities, the private ateliers. While you were mocking my supposed poverty, I was building an empire worth billions. Every dismissive comment, every social slight, every time you suggested I'd know my place, I was actually your boss. The lights came up fully, revealing my mother in her place of honor. And that seamstress you all treated so poorly? My mother, who helped build this empire stitch by stitch. Margaret Sinclair finally found her voice. Why the deception? I walked to the edge of the runway, looking down at their shocked faces. Because you taught me that the fashion world respects power more than talent. So I built both. Every time you excluded me from your events, I was buying another brand. While you mocked my career, I was signing the paychecks for your pattern makers. The screens now showed my complete portfolio. The brands, the properties, the manufacturing facilities, and the net worth that made their family fortunes look like pocket change. Now, I smiled, shall we discuss the future of your brands? Under my leadership, of course. The aftermath was everything I'd hoped for. Fashion blogs exploded with the news. Magazine editors who'd ignored my calls were now begging for exclusive interviews. And the Sinclair Group? They learned that true style doesn't come from a famous name. It comes from real talent and hard work. Camilla tried to approach me at the after-party, all fake smiles and sudden recognition of my obvious talent. I simply handed her a business card. My real one this time. The assistant pattern maker position is still open, I told her sweetly. Since you'll need a job now that your family brand belongs to me. Later that night, in my real office atop the KGL Tower, I looked out over the city lights. My mother joined me, bringing a bottle of champagne from my private collection. Your grandmother would be so proud, she said, hugging me. You didn't just succeed. You revolutionized the entire industry. While wearing better shoes than them, I added, making her laugh. My phone buzzed with a message from Sophia Blake. About that magazine editorial position. I smiled, thinking of all the times they'd told me to know my place. Turned out my place was at the very top of the industry they thought they ruled. To knowing your worth, Mom raised her glass. And making sure everyone else knows it too. To perception, I agreed. And the power of being underestimated. Looking out at my empire, I thought about all the other talented people being dismissed by the fashion elite. Maybe it was time to create a new kind of fashion house. One that valued creativity over connections, talent over family names. After all, the best revenge isn't just success. It's using that success to change the very system that tried to exclude you. Have you ever been underestimated by people who thought they were better than you? Ever had to hide your success until the perfect moment? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of fashion, power, and sweet revenge resonated with you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about success served with style. Remember, sometimes the best outfit you can wear is the look on their faces when they realize exactly who you are.